happening, guys? It's Boxing Lowdown and I'm back here with another video. Now, this is my post-fight review to Canelo and Kovalev, which took place last night in the MGM Grand Las Vegas. Canelo becoming a full-weight world champion, picking up the WBO light heavyweight strap by knocking out Sergey Kovalev in the 11th round. Now, first of all, let me just get this off my chest, man. The wait between the chief support and the main event was ridiculous. It took about an hour and 20 minutes. And no, let me just say as well, those of us here in the UK that are actually watching this fight live are up at like 4:30, 5, 5:15 in the morning waiting for this fight. And, you know, the UFC was taking place at the same time. I'm not a massive fan of the UFC. I don't really watch it, but I've never seen anything like it. Like a big main event like this between a superstar like Canelo, one of the biggest, well, the biggest fighter in world boxing today, being made to wait for a UFC event to finish just so DAZN could stream both fights was just unbelievable. Like, I just don't want to see nothing like that again. It was ridiculous, really. Everybody was just sitting around. People in the MGM Grand apparently had to watch the UFC on the screens until that was finished, and it was a joke. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but apparently, like, I'm not sure what UFC event it was. I don't really follow UFC like that, but it was unbelievable and something that I never thought I'd have to talk about. But yeah, boxing taking second place to UFC, and Canelo and Kovalev, you saw them in the dressing rooms. They were literally just sitting down waiting. You know, both fighters were just getting cold, and you know, they were literally almost sleeping at some point. You know, that's how bad it was getting. But anyway, on to the fight itself. Canelo and Kovalev. Now, this was a very intriguing fight for me, and one that I said crept up on a lot of us really quickly because we've had so many fights that we've been talking about. This is a big major fight, and you know, it was captivated a lot of the boxing crowd, but it just kind of slipped under the radar because of so much that's been going on. However, Canelo moving up to light heavyweight for the first time, fighting at the full-fledged 175 weight-pound limit. However, we did not know, well, the majority of us didn't know, that there was a rehydration clause in place for Kovalev, so he wasn't able to rehydrate to what he normally does. I think it had to be around 10 pounds or so over the limit, maybe 10, 12 pounds, so he couldn't go over that limit. So that definitely would have weakened Kovalev in some respects, and it's not something that many of us knew up until like a day or two before the fight. So that was interesting. And when people heard that, when that news started to filter through, a lot of people then really, who were kind of sitting on the fence a little bit or thinking Kovalev might have a chance, a lot of people really swayed to Canelo after that. So yeah, as for the fight itself, now I think Kovalev, for those that picked against him, surprised a lot of people. You know, he was he didn't stamp his authority for me, even though he was winning a lot of the rounds. You know, he won a few of the early rounds. He was boxing very well. We all know that Kovalev had a good jab, and the way for Kovalev to defeat Canelo would be to keep Canelo on the outside. But he didn't use his physicality for me. He didn't really use his, you know, his advantages. Going into the fight, looking at the tail of the tape, Kovalev was 6 foot, Canelo 5'8". You know, he had a much longer reach. You know, he's got the punching power at light heavyweight. So he didn't really use that to me. I mean, Kovalev was boxing like he was a light middleweight. You know, he was boxing like he was the slicker, like he was smaller than Canelo. And he was doing well at it. Like, let's be honest. I mean, he was pumping out that jab. It wasn't an authoritative jab, though. It wasn't a jab that snapped Canelo's head back or made him think twice about rushing in. It was just a little flicky jab, like pouring out here and there. But it was effective. You know, he was picking up the rounds. He was piling up the points. Canelo, for me, was very patient, probably too patient. And during the fight, I thought maybe this is part of the game plan to take Kovalev into the later rounds, because we know that he has a bit of a stamina issue. Canelo also has a bit of a stamina issue as well. But we thought maybe Canelo was probably pacing it. And, you know, as the rounds went by, I mean, a few rounds went here and there. Kovalev won, you know, out of the first 3 rounds, I had Kovalev winning 2 of them. And then after 6, I had it pretty much even. So it wasn't like a dominating performance by Kovalev, but he was doing very well. And you could tell he was frustrating Canelo in the middle to late rounds. I mean, he was boxing very well off that jab. Buddy McGirt was just putting the instruction in his head, like, just jab him, jab him, jab him. And Kovalev was doing that, but he wasn't really being authoritative. He wasn't throwing the right hand behind it that much. He wasn't really snapping Canelo's head back that much. So in turn, Canelo just kept pushing forward, like pushing towards Kovalev. And yeah, I mean, at the end, like we saw the ending in the 11th round, a brilliant one-punch knockout from Canelo that, you know, the left hook set it up really. The left hook really wobbled him and took Kovalev out of his stride. And then he was open to the straight right from Canelo. And Canelo landed that straight right, and Kovalev he was out for like a few seconds on the ropes. Like, he was literally out of it. So Canelo becomes a full-weight world champion, picks up the WBO light heavyweight title strap. What next for him? Like, there's been talks that he may be able to stay at light heavyweight. I think he's entertaining the idea of staying up there. What do you guys think about that? I mean, it's a risky strategy because the other champions at light heavyweight are, you know, they're at this stage, they're more dangerous than Sergey Kovalev. You know, Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, those guys are more dangerous than Kovalev, let's be honest. So if Canelo was to fight one of those two, that would really push him to the limit, I think, at light heavyweight. And listen, he's a very talented fighter, Canelo. And Kovalev was starting to get tired in the 10th and 11th rounds. But I have to say, he didn't have it all his own way last night, not at all. I was looking on Twitter and everywhere else, and a lot of people had Kovalev winning. Even though I had, up until the knockout, I had it a draw. There were a lot of people that had Kovalev winning it. There were a few people that had Canelo up, but it was that kind of fight. You know, it didn't all go his own way. It wasn't no dominating performance like some people were predicting. Canelo was in some sort of a fight here, and you know, even though his face didn't show the signs of a fight, you know, he was in it. He was frustrated at times by Sergey Kovalev. So, and that's an old Kovalev. That's 36-year-old Kovalev. So how's he going to get on with the likes of a Beterbiev, who's a lot stronger, who's younger, fitter, punches harder, or punch just as hard as Kovalev, and he won't be holding back on those shots. He will be trying to take Canelo out. Beterbiev has knocked every single one of his opponents out, and he just had his career best victory by knocking out Alexander Vostok a few weeks ago in Philadelphia. So, man, I don't know. Canelo's got options, man. He could do what he wants. He's the #1 guy in the sport. He could fluctuate between middleweight and light heavyweight at this point. You know, we could see him go up against Triple G or Jamal Charlo, or we could see him take on Artur Beterbiev. He's literally got license to roam between those divisions now. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, man. But as for Sergey Kovalev, listen, I don't really expect to see much more for Kovalev now. He said that he's still up for fighting and making these fights happen, but you know, he's made that money now from the Canelo fight. He's had a long career. He's been world champion. He's been on the pound-for-pound list. He has been a very world-class fighter for a long time. So maybe it's time for Kovalev to hang them up. You know, he's 36 years old. So what more does he need to do, especially in light heavyweight, where it's not going to be that easy to pick up a title? Like, who's he going to get the title from? He could fight Dmitry Bivol. I mean, that would sell. Both of them being Russian. He could fight Beterbiev as well. But, you know, would he beat those guys at this stage of his career? The aura with Kovalev has gone now. You know, he's not that sort of, you know, crusher, that scary, you know, type light heavyweight guy. He's, you know, he showed some great boxing ability last night. He wasn't really the crusher at all, more like the boxer. So, yeah, I think Kovalev should call it a day. But, you know, that's down to him and his team to talk about, I suppose, in the next coming days. And for Canelo, he's got loads of options now. So the world's pretty much his oyster. So it's going to be interesting to see what he looks to do next. And a discussion that a lot of people are going to talk about is the pound-for-pound list. I'm going to do a separate video about that as to where I think I'll put these fighters now in the pound-for-pound. But for now, let me know your thoughts on the fight itself. You know, we had the undercard with Ryan Garcia. I thought he looked very good, winning in the first round. So, you know, drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think about it. What would you like to see next for Canelo and Kovalev? Make sure you drop them in the comment section below. I'll catch you guys on the next one.